From Erwin and his wife, Bertha Irene Pearson, our parents were born. 7 children altogether. While Erwin grew up and hunted and farmed in Harrison County, Bertha Irene Pearson had a very different upbringing. Having come from a divorced family and moving around constantly, life was much more unstable for her. Having lived in Clarinda, Iowa, and later Villisca, she ended up in the Des Moines Children's Home. Irene was then moved to several foster homes, living in Woodbine and Kingsley, Iowa. Eventually, Irene ended up with the Kirkpatrick family. She describes this as the best thing that ever happened to me. With the Kirkpatricks, she writes that she discovered a love of life, literature, and of God. They moved to Wagner, South Dakota on a farm, where she relates a story in her memoirs about a Labor Day celebration in the community. It seems that Indians from a nearby reservation came to Wagner to perform dances. But when it rained, the Indians all took shelter in the Kirkpatrick's barn. This caused quite a stir for the children, who were very curious. When Irene turned 17, she left South Dakota for a reunion with her brothers Carl, sister Orpha, and another brother Earl in Macon, Missouri. Her brothers, Carl and Earl, would later become successful vaudeville entertainers and traveled extensively. They kept contact with each other from that time on. By age 18, Irene returned to Woodbine to finish high school, and this is where fate brought her into Erwin Henderson's life. Irene had become friends with Laura Henderson, Erwin's sister. And in 1913, on Easter Sunday, during a storm that produced tornadoes that destroyed part of Woodbine, Erwin and his sister Laura sought shelter with Irene. They had been riding on their horses. That was the first time Erwin and Irene met. The rest is, as they say, history. Later that year, on December 24th, 1913, Erwin and Irene were married in the Paxton Hotel in Omaha, Nebraska. In those days, people took the train to Omaha. It was the fastest way. The early 1900s was known as the Progressive Era. Teddy Roosevelt was president, and it was an era of rapid urbanization and industrialization, and life became more hectic. But it seemed that life in Harrison County went on as usual. Most people still farmed, and family was still the most important thing in one's life. The year that Erwin and Irene were married was the beginning of President Woodrow Wilson's 2 terms. World War I started the next year, and by 1917, the United States was involved. Farming was fairly profitable in those years due to high demand, and Erwin and Irene decided to start their family. The couple would have 6 daughters and a son. Lois Irene, born September 27, 1914. Donna Frances, January 14, 1916. Nellie June, November 28, 1918. Dorothy Esta, April 14, 1920. Bonnie Glee, November 29, 1921. Darlene May, July 19, 1926. And Jack Franklin, November 14, 1932. There were both good times and hard times in the Henderson household as our parents grew up. The stock market crashed in 1929 and millions were without work. During the Great Depression, life was much more difficult for everyone, and the Henderson family was no exception. The family had to move to several different farms, and even tried their luck in Missouri for a while, near a little town called Udall. However, Harrison County always drew the Hendersons back. What was life at the Henderson farm like in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s? This was the era of Franklin Roosevelt, the Roaring Twenties, and the Great Depression and World War II. Lois, Bonnie, and Jack have written that life growing up usually involved dancing, hunting, music, or listening to the radio, and of course, lots of hard work. There were always friends and relatives coming and going, but perhaps we can best understand the memories of life in Harrison County from the mouths of our parents and Grandma Henderson. Listen to what family, faith, and the land are all about.